Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Whiteout Penn State Football Post Game Show. My name is Dylan Callan Crowley. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Marty Leap, who is a little bit under the weather last night after his Richland Rams won their district championship over Bishop Guilfoyle. Congratulations to the entire Marty Leap family, as well as Richland, in winning their district championship. And we'll see if they can make a playoff run in the PI AA 2A playoffs.
2A.
2A playoffs. But Richland was not the only team, Marty, on Saturday to get in the win column. The Penn State Nittany Lions finally get back into the win column after a long losing streak. Defeated Michigan State yesterday afternoon in East Lansing, 28-10. It was a game that, I don't think maybe the final score does it justice of how much better of a team Penn State was in this game, and they weren't dominant from start to finish by any means. But Ethan Grunkmeyer had some flashes. The rushing attack was great. The defense was very good. We talked about it coming out of that heartbreaking loss to Indiana, Marty. There was a chance that Penn State could use that performance to catapult themselves into the last three games of the season, try to finish 500. They got step one done on Saturday with this win in East Lansing. Just a really overall strong performance. Offense, defense, special teams. This is what we wanted to see out of this Nittany Lions team on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, huge congratulations to Terry Smith. First win as interim head coach. I mean, it had to be sweet. I mean, you saw the reaction after the game, getting Gatorade bath players, carrying them off the field. So you have to feel good for Terry, for these players, for everyone still there on the coaching staff. Especially because, as we've said on here in recent weeks, they should have had 2 wins already with Terry. They should have beaten Iowa, and they definitely should have beaten Indiana.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of what we talked about Wednesday, right? We felt like they had the opportunity to come out and dominate in the trenches, which they did. The defensive line just took over this game. Denied Dennis Sutton, was an absolute game wrecker.
Yeah.
I mean, he finished with what? I believe 2 sacks. Excuse me. For Dennis Sutton on 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, probably, and he played better than that on Saturday afternoon. So it's what you wanted to see. You wanted to see Penn State come out after the Indiana game, not have that letdown after that heartbreaking loss like they did after the Oregon game.
Yeah.
And early on, it didn't look great, right? You had the opening series where you drop a snap on third down, you end up going out, the State gets a long touchdown run. I remember you texted me in a group chat we're in where it's like, oh, well, here we go, death spiral number 2. And to their credit, they didn't let that happen. And I think the players deserve a lot of credit. The coaches deserve a lot of credit because, I mean, one thing that's been obvious for this team since James Franklin's been fired is there's been no quit. The team has remained engaged. They've remained, look at Michigan State, right? I mean, Michigan State, the team, his coach hasn't even been fired yet, and you can tell they've completely quit and checked out on the season, and that hasn't happened at Penn State. So a lot of credit to go to Terry Smith and the players, the coaches, and also, as we said before, that's a credit to the culture that James Franklin had built before he was let go.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the best part of this performance was that for a second straight week, we saw that Penn State rushing attack. Really not even a second straight week because they were running the ball well in the first quarter against Ohio State before they went away from it. So really for 3 straight weeks now, we've seen this Penn State rushing attack look like the rushing attack that we expected them to have coming into the season. Katron Allen yesterday, amazing. 25, 181, 2 touchdowns, 7.2 yards per carry. Nicholas Singleton still – struggling to get by, 15 for 56. But, Katron Allen has been one of the few bright spots of this team all season long. And they have 2 games left. He's going to have 2 solid games. But, that record for him to become Penn State's all-time leading rusher is only, I believe, 130-something yards away. So it needs about 2 70-yard performances, which is well within his wheelhouse. He could possibly get it at Beaver Stadium this upcoming Saturday against Nebraska. It's really good to see this Russian attack continue to perform at a high level after a really, really poor start to the season over the first, 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, I think with Katron Allen too, and Denai Dennis Sutton is in the exact same boat here. Those are two guys that when everything unfolded the way it did, especially after you got 4 or 5 games in, your coach is fired, you're 3-3, you're not going to the playoff. Those guys easily could have just checked out on the season, started to prepare for the NFL draft, and they have not. So a ton of credit to them for that. And if I'm an NFL executive, that is something that is going to definitely raise you on my draft board. And you mentioned Katron, 130 yards to break the school record, roughly. He's going to get it, I think. I mean, first off, he might run for 200 against Rutgers in the last game of the year because their defense is atrocious.
And then Nebraska defense, the defensive line isn't exactly
that's
the strongest.
Next. Against Nebraska on Saturday. I mean, it's going to be a night game at Beaver Stadium. I expect the crowd to be pretty lively still. And as a coaching staff, I'm sure they'd love for him to be able to break the record in his last game at Beaver Stadium.
Right.
And as you mentioned, Nebraska, I mean, their defense overall in the year, the numbers don't look terrible, but they're not a good line of scrimmage team. There's a reason. I just looked. I don't know what the early line is, but ESPN's FPI has Penn State with a 75% chance to win, which may seem crazy to people because Nebraska's 7-3, but Nebraska is not a good team in the line of scrimmage. And, Penn State's both offensive and defensive line have played really good the last few weeks. So I think that's a big factor there. And obviously we'll get into that more later this week when we do a preview. But yeah, I think that Katron's going to get the record, and I won't be surprised if he gets it against Nebraska because, like I said, I think 130 yards against that Nebraska defense is not going to be hard to do. And I'm sure the coaching staff, against when Penn State was playing against Indiana, Nick Singleton had his 3 touchdown performance. I think he's 2 touchdowns from tying Saquon.
He's one touchdown behind.
Yeah.
So we could see 2 records be broken here in the next 2 weeks. We will see 2 records. I'm sure Nicholas will find the end zone one more time.
And the thing is, the big thing with that too is like when he did that against Indiana and pulled within 1 touchdown, I remember talking to my dad about it. And that's what he says. Like, hey, you've got nothing left to play for this year as a coaching staff. These are the things you're going to focus on as a coaching staff. Let's get Nick that touchdown record. Let's get Katron the rushing record. I mean, those are 2 guys who I know we talked about it earlier in the year. One of the things that really sucks about the season going the way it is, I feel like those are 2 guys. Denai Dennis Sutton's another one who's in a similar boat. Their legacies at Penn State are going to be very tainted by this season. And I feel like people aren't going to remember all the good they did their first 3 years. So the least you can do, as a coaching staff, and especially as a thank you to those guys, not just for what you did the first 3 years, but for not, opting out when the season went sideways, is to, let them really cement their names in the Penn State record books on their way out.
Yeah. And, I quickly just want to give props to Nicholas Singleton. I mean, the dude has had probably the worst senior season he probably could have imagined in terms of production. 107 carries, 419 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. Still, by the way, has found the end zone 10 times this season. So finishes his career with at least will finish his career with 4 double-digit touchdown seasons. But, with him not having the yardage production, really taking a step back in terms of his role too, because Katron has become the lead back, and after they were really splitting carries, Singleton could have, completely, just kind of checked out. He could have left the team. He could have done a multitude of things, but he's really been unselfish, I think, over the last couple of weeks of this season. And, I still think he's going to get a shot in the NFL, and the unselfishness that he's shown this season and the ability to take this season in stride, I think, is going to those are going to be things that NFL teams ask, Terry Smith and the coaching staff about during the draft process. And those are the type of things that can go a long way in the draft process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've said all along, I still think, even with his struggles this year, Nick Singleton's going to get to the NFL and be fine. He's a guy, he's just so versatile. He's so explosive, such a great athlete. You get him into the right system, right? Kevin O'Connell, a Sean McVay, a Kyle Shanahan, one of those guys, they would drool with the capabilities of what they could do with a guy like Singleton, especially because he's such a strong pass catcher as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think Singleton's still going to be fine. He's still going to have a fine career. And I think on that note, a few other guys, I think continue to just quietly, and it has not been acknowledged because the way the season's gone, but quietly last few weeks really put it together here in their swan song college. One in particular is Vega Ione. I think the last 3 to 4 weeks, he has played probably as well as just about any interior offensive lineman in the Big Ten. And it has gone unnoticed because of Penn State. I get that. But I think, Ione in recent weeks, written yesterday as well, has really shown why you've seen some mock drafts and things of that nature of him as a potential first-round pick.
He was a midseason
in today's NFL world as an interior guy.
He was a midseason All-American on most outlets. End of the season one, maybe he still cracks some All-American teams, but he's absolutely well said about Vega Ione.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just been so good the last few weeks. He's showing why he was a preseason All-American in a lot of places. And again, why, even though it's not easy to go in the first round as an interior offensive lineman in today's world, he's going to have a legit shot at it, I feel, if he continues to play the way he has. Also from yesterday, Ethan Grunkemeyer, there was some good with the bad, which you expect. I know you, Clay, and I were discussing this morning. We live in a world where a lot of people feel like, you've got to be ready to go from day one in sports, whether that's college to pros, whatever it is, and nobody can improve. I know yesterday was not as good of a day for Grunkemeyer as we saw against Indiana, but I still thought there was good things there. I like that they're still letting him throw the ball down the field, the long touchdown to Devontae Ross, obviously. Now, there's sometimes there was a fourth down play, and I know this one in particular we were discussing. I remember even watching this live thinking it. They had fourth down at like the Michigan State 25 or so, and he rolled out to his right and just I don't know if he didn't go through his progressions well, couldn't get himself to release the ball because he had a receiver open for the first down and just didn't throw, and then winds up getting sacked on the play. So some of the decision making, some of the maybe the quick release, whatever you want to call it, definitely needs to improve. But you continue to see improvements out of Ethan Grunkemeyer. And I think if you're Penn State, that's what you want. Because, again, this is a different scenario. You don't know if he's going to be here next year. But you still want to see all your young guys improve. And, there's a lot of young guys who I think showed a lot of good things yesterday that we'll continue to get into. But, yeah, I thought overall, Grunkemeyer wasn't a great game from him by any means. But at the same time, he didn't go out and lose them the game. 8 of 13.
No, he played within himself.
2 touchdowns. He did what he needed to do on a day where the running game was really working.
Right. And exactly. He played within himself. He didn't try to do too much. And most importantly, after, 4 turnovers in the last 3 games, no turnovers in this game. He got sacked twice, held on the ball. I think he had maybe one pass that you could argue was a turnover-worthy pass. But, just overall, I thought, it was you're going to have these type of games. Unless you're a Heisman-level quarterback, you're going to have these types of games where, it's not your day. You're not going to throw for 250, 300 yards. You're going to have a slower day. But, he was still efficient, 8 for 13, 127 yards. When they did throw the ball, he was averaging 15.9 yards per completion. I thought it was a really solid game out of Ethan Grunkemeyer, and he continues to show that whether it's at Penn State or somewhere else, he's going to be a Power 4 starting quarterback next season, and he has that potential. And I will say this: he does maybe even more so than Drew at times, but he delivers a really nice ball when he has time in the pocket. He delivers strong strikes right to the middle of the wide receiver's chest. And not that Drew doesn't, but Drew is very inconsistent in that manner at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's the perfect way to put it. Is Drew would oftentimes be very inconsistent with that. And this is again something we've talked with Clay. One play you see Drew just make this incredible off-balance throw, just pure arm strength, but then the next play he can't hit a receiver on a 5-yard swing route. It is the accuracy issues, and that hasn't been an issue with Grunkemeyer. I think you put it perfectly with saying efficient, because that's what he was yesterday. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen combined were averaging 5.9 yards per carry. When your backs are doing that, all you've got to do is be efficient, not turn the ball over. That's what he did, and that's why it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking with the offense before we go on the defense, Trevor Pena and Devontae Ross both had really nice games. It's a shame the season has gone the way it has. Because, man, I think it would have been exciting to see what these two could have done with Penn State playing at their highest capability. Even last year, I think what they could have potentially been within this offense would have been really exciting to watch. Trevor Pena very quietly putting together just a really solid season, despite only finding the end zone once. Devontae Ross is up to 5 touchdowns as well. Offensive line also deserves credit. They did a great job on the ground, opening holes. They allowed 2 sacks in this game, though I think one can argue. I think one of those sacks you could probably put on Grunkemeyer a little bit more, but either way, the offensive line, like the Russian attack, has been playing some of its best football these last 3 weeks, and we'll see if they can continue to do so here over the last 2 games as they push for bowl eligibility. I don't know. We talked about it before. I don't know if they'll accept a bowl bid. I kind of doubt it, but at the same time, at least they're headed in the right direction here to wrap up what has been a disappointing season.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you're heading in the right direction. That's the big thing. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to accept the bowl bid for a lot of reasons. But I mean, you can take some pride in finishing your season with a 3-game winning streak. You can take some pride in not finishing with a losing record, right? I think those are the kinds of things. And even as a program as a whole, you know when you hire a new coach in the world of high school football, college football, you get the new coach bump. Yeah. But if you can ride a 3-game winning streak into that new coach bump, you're going to have a lot of momentum in the program. So, yeah, I think those are important things moving forward. And again, as we said, and we'll get into it more this week when we do our preview show, I get that Nebraska's 7-3, but I think Penn State, even in their current state, is a better team than Nebraska, especially without Dylan Raiola. And so I think there's no reason they can't beat the Cornhuskers, especially that game being in Happy Valley. And then Rutgers is just, they're Rutgers. So again, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to walk away from that one with a win and finish the year 6-6, which, I mean, all things considered, I mean, you and I came on here after the Northwestern game. We sat here and said we didn't think they were going to win another game. And, it
was a legitimate possibility.
Yeah. And, and then the way they lost against Iowa and especially the way they lost against Indiana, it was like, man, they really may not win another game. And to their credit, they really came out yesterday. And a lot of that goes to Terry Smith, goes to some of these senior leaders on this team. And kudos to them for that. But no, go ahead.
No, for what it's worth, Pro Football Focus does not credit either of the sacks yesterday on the offensive line.
Yeah.
Which I always think is obviously PFF is very objective, but I always like to see who gets credited with those sacks. Because honestly, if it's not on the offensive line, they're quarterback-driven sacks, and that's also part of the learning game for Ethan Grunkemeyer. Like, he's not going to be great at identifying pressures 4 games into his starting career.
He's not.
It's just not how this works. Very few quarterbacks step in at the collegiate level and able to do that. Let's look to the defense. Don't need to go in depth on this, but Jim Knowles, I think, the last 2 weeks has been making a very strong argument of why he should stick around beyond this season with the next coaching staff. I know a lot of fans are going to pin this season's issues on Jim Knowles. I don't think he is immune to taking blame for what occurred throughout the season. I think the defense at key moments certainly did not play well. They did not play well against UCLA. They did not play well against Oregon at times. They did not play well, though they did pretty good against Oregon, all things considered. They did not play well against Ohio State at times. But the last 2 weeks, you have seen, I think, the defense, things are starting to click within this Jim Knowles system. Players are playing a little bit more freely. They're not thinking about – maybe Jim Knowles has simplified some things, but it doesn't look like they're out there thinking as much. They're just going out there and playing. And I think that's a big reason they almost beat Indiana. I know people are going to say, well, they lost the game at the end because the defense couldn't get one more stop. That Indiana drive also took, 3 ridiculous catches from wide receivers to win the game. I still think Jim Knowles is one of the best defense coordinators in college football, assuming they don't hire a defensive-minded head coach, which we'll talk about the head coaching search here in a minute. But, I just think Jim Knowles has done really well the last 2 weeks, showing that, this defense does have the potential to still be really good. going forward. I know. I do wonder, does perhaps a ton of roster reset kind of reset the timeline? But nonetheless, that's a discussion for after the season. But yeah, just the defense was really good this week after being really good against Indiana. It's another encouraging sign.
Yeah, it was. And, like you said, I think some of it's because they've simplified things. Some of it's because they've been in this system long enough now that it's starting to click. And the defense just continues to play really well week after week. I'm with you. I still think Jim Knowles is one of the best defense coordinators in college football. Some of it is that. Some of it's the structure of his contract. I do think whoever's hired, if they're not a defensive guy, Knowles is going to stick around. Even if they are a defensive guy, he may stick around and they find a way to merge their systems. That's not unheard of in the world of football. But
I don't think it's a deal breaker necessarily if the next head coach is like, no, I'm okay. But I think Pat Kraft is going to be like pushing Jim Knowles as a shiny toy very much.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is if you are a coach coming in, especially if you're a coach who's coached against Jim Knowles as an offensive guy, you know what you're getting in a good way. I say that, and like you said, I think Kraft's going to push it because with Knowles' contract, it looks like Virginia Tech's going to do Penn State a big favor in terms of the buyout and how much they're going to owe James. But if you can avoid having to pay a buyout to Jim Knowles, especially when Knowles still can be of a lot of value to the program, you're going to look to do that.
Plus, you still have buyouts to pay to quite a few other coaches.
Yeah, because I'm sure, and a lot of it's going to depend on this coaching staff, who leaves, who goes. If they do leave, how is it that they leave? Do they leave on their own? But yeah, there's going to be some money there. It's going to need to be shelved out, especially for Andy Kotelnicki, because I'm very confident saying Andy Kotelnicki will not be here next year. But one guy defensively, what we're talking about the young guys, I do want to point out from yesterday was Darius Dixon. I think very quietly. I know last week, I haven't seen the snap counts yet for yesterday. Last week, he was second amongst cornerbacks in snaps played. He very, very quietly has started to round into shape and put together a really nice true freshman season.
Becoming very quickly one of those guys alongside Chaz Coleman at Penn State should make a priority and keep it around.
Yeah, and he's a guy where I think, I personally, I'm going to be surprised. Well, let me put it this way. If Terry Smith is coaching college football next year, I think it's at Penn State. I think he either sticks around or retires.
I'm sure James Franklin will make a push for him.
Yeah, but I don't think Terry's tied to James quite as much as some of these systems are, just because of, everybody. I'm sure most of you watching this, that Terry's roots to Penn State run deep.
And Terry has been making it very well known in press conferences that, if the next coach is willing to have him around, it's definitely something he would consider.
And as the next coach, if you don't want to keep the guy who has proven to be one of the best cornerback coaches in the country in terms of development of talent, will continue to help you keep the Pittsburgh area locked down in recruiting, while also being, a good liaison to the letterman, to helping retain this roster. I don't see a scenario where it doesn't happen. But anyway, assuming Terry is still back, I think that helps you with your odds of keeping Dixon. And I think one thing with Darius Dixon is you're seeing, and I'm a firm believer in this, I think sometimes if you come from some of those big-time national powerhouse kind of programs in high school, which Darius Dixon did, coming from Mater Dei in California, you're ready earlier than a lot of guys, right?
Yep.
A lot of times when you see your true freshmen who make those impacts, it's your Mater Dei kids, your St. Francis Academies, IMG, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Joe Prep, whatever it may be, because they're in a mini college program in high school already. Right. But yeah, I think Dixon the last few weeks has just really started to flash. Yesterday, he had one or two pass breakups, a tackle for a loss, was all over the field. Just you constantly, and again, I think some of this goes back to that high school program it came from. The kid clearly has a very high football IQ. He finds the ball, he gets to the ball, in on plays. So yeah, I'm with you. Him and Chaz Coleman, they're going to be the two true freshmen here, and Kobe Howard probably isn't far behind them. I know he didn't have a catch yesterday, but you've seen the last few weeks what he's capable of. Those are probably your big three in terms of the true freshmen who've played this year. They're going to be very important for them to keep around. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Kraft's already been in contact with those guys, figuring things out. But those are the big threes, but especially Coleman and Dixon, because Coleman and Dixon, I think, they're very premium positions, right? An elite pass rusher and a corner that is showing Dixon has shown. Those are two things that in today's college football can go a long way towards winning a lot of football.
I'm checking out the Twitter machine quickly here to just make sure I didn't miss anything. But any concern on Chaz Coleman missing back-to-back games here? Maybe it's injury, maybe it's personal decision. We don't know.
I mean, I thought I remember reading that last week they just called it an illness, and then part of I'm assuming they said illness, and then I thought I remember that he kind of tweaked something while battling through the illness. So I'm wondering if it was one of those where he didn't a flu bug or something, tried to rush it back. I'm not concerned just because by all means it's been. And my thing is too, if you were Chaz Coleman, if you were going to do this, what you either opt out and bail out after 4 games, or you keep going. You know what I mean. Why if you're not. Either preserve the red shirt. I'm not worried about it. I believe the reports whatnot that it is illness related, injury related, whatever it may be. Real quick though, I found the snap counts. Darius Dixon actually outsnapped everybody at corner yesterday. He had 47, 39 for Davian Collins, 31 for Zion Tracy, 20 for Elliott Washington, and 8 for Kenny Woosley.
We've said it in the past, but this is the time of the season for Penn State. Even though you're pushing for bowl eligibility here, or 500 season, whatever you want to call it, because no preseason number 2 team has ever failed to finish 500. Not that I think they will care. I mean, I think they care, obviously. Not that they will. If that happens, so be it. It's a time of the year to play. A time of the year, time in the season, with how things have gone, to play all these young guys, get them as much experience as possible.
Yeah, and you're seeing
without burning red shirts.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through the snap counts now. I mean, Kobe Howard was 4th in receiver snaps, but Pena had 28, Ross 27, Howard 26. So I mean, he essentially was, right there. Defensive tackle Xavier Gilliam was 3 snaps behind Durant for the most. Defensive end Jalen Harvey and Yvonne Kemajo were 3rd and 4th in snaps. You already mentioned Dixon at corner. At linebacker, you had Keon Wiley and Alex Tash both getting a ton of snaps yesterday. So you're seeing that youth movement. And, we've mentioned before some of these guys, Tash and Wiley in particular, being Pennsylvania guys, right? You'd like to think that probably increases the odds of them sticking around as well. Just because they're guys who, regardless of who the head coach was when they were getting recruited, were probably going to come to Penn State. So yeah, I think that's a big thing there too. Just continue to develop these young guys, because again, as I mentioned on the pregame show this week, if you're the coaching staff of Penn State, it's your job until it's not your job anymore, right?
Right.
You just got to keep doing your job, and whatever happens, happens.
All right, let's talk about the coaching search quickly, because yesterday was an interesting day. Mike Elko is, by all accounts, ready to sign a massive extension with the Texas A&M Aggies that will keep him in College Station for the foreseeable future, while also making him one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in college football. So well-deserved for Mike Elko on that. And that being said, does take another top name off the coaching carousel for Penn State here to potentially hire as their next head football coach. Eli Drinkowitz remains out there. That being said, it does seem increasingly likely that whoever doesn't win the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, maybe it is Ole Miss who wins the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, but it is looking like both LSU and Florida could also be making pushes for Eli Drinkowitz here in the near future as well. So things are getting interesting on that end.
Yeah, I mean, go
ahead on that first.
Okay, yeah, I know I've been saying for a few weeks now. I think gun to my head, I would say it's going to be Drinkowitz. Now, I mean, you make a good point where whoever doesn't win the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes, do they pivot back to Drinkowitz? I don't know. I feel like if I'm LSU, I'm going to feel I can do better than Eli Drinkowitz, and that's not a knock on Drinkowitz. That's just, you're LSU. You should be able to go and handpick basically whoever you want. And maybe Eli Drinkowitz is who they want. I don't know. But, you mentioned Elko, the extension, that's going to be off the table now. I mean, by all accounts, things, that we've read, we've heard, things are being reported nationally, Thamel, people at The Athletic, that was definitely Kraft's top choice. That was his big, big fish he was going to go and try and get. But yeah, Drinkowitz, Brent Key obviously is a guy who I think continue to get mentioned.
I think that's the name that is very, not even slowly, but depending on how the next couple of weeks transpire, could very quickly shoot themselves up the board.
I mean, it's kind of weird to put it this way, but had Georgia Tech not rallied to beat Boston College yesterday, I think he really could have climbed the board, because with that loss, the Yellow Jackets probably aren't playing conference championship weekend. I think now, I don't know who they play next week before they play Georgia. And obviously, the Georgia game won't impact whether or not they play for the ACC championship. But they play Pitt. That's right. They have a bye week in the Pitt. But anyway, I don't know. I know they're going to play Pitt, but they'll play. But regardless, they're probably going to wind up playing for an ACC championship, which could,
delay things.
Yeah, delay things. I think, obviously the dream scenario is you have your coach in place before national.
They got Pitt and Georgia left, so what can happen in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's no guarantee that they're going to win. They may not win another game, because Georgia obviously is Georgia, and not that Pitt's great by any means, but it's Georgia Tech. I think Key is squeezing every last ounce of juice out of what he has there, and that's a credit to him. And I think you and I both have said that's part of what makes him intriguing to you if you're Penn State, is you see what he's doing at Georgia Tech and how relentless of a guy he is in terms of recruiting and that sort of thing. What could he do with Penn State's resources? So yeah, I think those are two to watch as well. I'm not sure.
Well, let's you brought up about him winning that game and how that could hurt him. Well, let's talk about quickly somebody who did win a game yesterday. Mr. Kalen DeBoer down at Alabama did not win a game yesterday. He lost Oklahoma for a second straight year. Sooners become the first team to beat Alabama back-to-back seasons since Ole Miss did so in 2014, 2015, and 15-16.
Yeah. Also, I didn't know this one till I saw it last night. Do you know the last time Alabama lost their homecoming game? Do you know who was coaching the opposing team?
Who? Nick
Saban. Really? They had not lost homecoming since losing to Saban's LSU, and that would have been 25 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And I know people are going to think it sounds ridiculous, but there have been reports that Penn State definitely has reached out to DeBoer. DeBoer has not said no. There was always some questions I felt on the culture fit for DeBoer at Alabama, because I know Saban's not Saban's from West Virginia, spent a lot of time in the North, but he had his time at LSU and in the SEC, right or wrong, especially some of those deep South SEC blue bloods. If you're not from the good old boy system down South or have experience down there, people are hesitant to give you a chance. And you combine that with, you never want to be the guy that follows the guy.
Right.
There could be an opening there. And, I personally still think DeBoer is probably a top 5 coach in all of college football.
Yeah.
If you're Alabama, you'd be insane to allow that to happen. But, hey, crazier things have happened before. So
yeah, it's still of all the paths to the next Penn State head coach, it's still a very unlikely path.
Yes, I think it's going to be Drinkowitz or Key. I really do. And I think you feel similar to that.
Yes.
But yeah,
well, I'm dying of a cough over here.
You're all right. But yeah, I think it'll be one of those two. I think you'd be very happy with either hire if you're Penn State, especially with Drinkowitz, because he's going to come pretty locked and loaded at quarterback. In addition to having Ethan Grunkemeyer, who's shown some good things. He can bring Matt Zollers, which is a name all Penn State fans should know. Maybe you see the return of Bo Pribula. You have Gavin Sidewar, 4-star quarterback from LaSalle College High School in Philadelphia, currently committed to Mizzou. I'm assuming would flip to Penn State in that scenario, because, he's a guy who Penn State recruited anyway, and he always seemed like he really wanted a Penn State offer, and it never came from the old staff. So, that would be, if I'm Pat Kraft, that would be a very enticing thing to me with Eli Drinkowitz as well, is the fact that you probably don't have to worry about quarterback.
Does 3-loss Alabama get into the college football playoffs if it's the third losses in the SEC championship game?
If it's in the SEC championship game, maybe. If it's 9-3 Bama like last year, there's no way. Man, I don't. That's a tough call, because that Florida State loss is just so freaking bad. That's my thing.
It is.
You have the win at Georgia, which is really, it keeps looking better and better because Georgia just keeps winning. The Missouri win, if you look at it now, it may not look great, but that was before Missouri's season went sideways due to injuries, and you went into Columbia and won. You thoroughly dominated a very good Vanderbilt team. You pretty much dominated a pretty solid Tennessee team. But again, that Florida State loss is just so bad. And I don't know.
I asked because if they do beat Auburn in final week of the season, they won't make the SEC championship game and face Texas A&M.
Yeah, well, I mean, it may not be Texas. No, Texas A&M will be because they came back and won. So what am I thinking? Yeah.
So, Alabama has would have the tiebreaker on Georgia and Ole Miss based on conference on a winning percentage.
But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think a lot of that would depend on what shakes out elsewhere, right? Because the Big 12 is probably one bid league. The ACC is just cannibalizing itself. So who the hell knows what happens with them? Notre Dame's going to win out and get in. A lot of it may hinge on how many Big Ten teams get in, right? Does USC beat Oregon and solidify a fourth Big Ten team? Because if that happens, it may not. But if Oregon beats USC and you look at Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana as the only Big Ten teams that get in, that could open a door for a 3-loss Alabama.
Right.
And I think, too, I know we've only had 1 year of the 12-team playoff, but if there's anything we learned from the committee last year is they're not going to ding you for conference championship losses, right? Because we saw last year they weren't seeded this way because of the stupid rule with the automatic buys for conference champions. When they did the final playoff rankings, you still had Penn State and Texas in the top 4, right? Those two teams were not dinged for losing in the conference championship game. Now, both lost one-score games, right? You had one that lost in overtime, one that,
right.
And then Penn State was driving to tie the game in the final 2 minutes before Drew Aller threw an interception. So that may have been part of it as well. But I would say yes, just because I think ultimately the way everything else would shake out, they'd sneak in there. But I don't think it'd be a guarantee by any means.
And they would at the very least be having a away first round game.
Yes, it would not be at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Well,
no. Go ahead.
Any other thoughts?
No, that's what I was going to ask you. I think we can.
No, I'm dying over here, so yeah. I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah, get ready to wrap it up. But
I may have to. You're going to have to do the wrap up.
No, you're good. We'll be back this week. We discussed it moving forward. We think our preview shows we may move it from Wednesday to Thursday. Probably we'll move it from Wednesday to Thursday. So we'll catch you this week, Thursday evening, to preview Penn State hosting Nebraska the senior day at Beaver Stadium under the lights. As we said, even though Nebraska's 7-3, that's a game Penn State's very capable of winning. It's a game Penn State's going to most likely be favored in. The early ESPN FPI gives them a 75% chance of winning, so hopefully they can make it 2 in a row. For Dylan, I'm Marty. As always, thank you for joining us here, the Whiteout Report post-game show. Thank you for dealing with my voice with Dylan's cough today. Make sure you subscribe and like, super chat us, and we will see you on Thursday. Thank you very much.